Jets owner Woody Johnson speaks to the media and proves once again he is the National Football League's George Costanza. Locked On Jets starts now.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. And I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. A big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we have our weekly mailbag. Each Wednesday, we try and do a mailbag with listener questions. We have a lot of great questions to get to on topics such as what the Jets need to do to develop the next quarterback they draft, what Aaron Glenn's job security could mean for the team at the trade deadline, and so much more. But before we get to our mailbag, there's something else we need to talk about, because for some reason, the New York Jets have once again allowed their owner out into the public unsupervised to speak to the media. And Woody Johnson made quite a few headlines in his comments to the public yesterday. We got to break that down. There's an old expression in sports: we win as a team, we lose as a team. And that means when things are not going well, whether you're in professional sports, in college, high school, any level, when things aren't going well, you don't point fingers at other people on the team. You think internally, what can I be doing better? How can I help improve this situation? Let's just say that's never been Woody Johnson's motto. And he proved it once again yesterday. He was asked about the performance of head coach Aaron Glenn. His response was, in addition to other things, if you look at any head coach with a quarterback like that, you're going to see similar results across the league. If we could just complete a pass, it would look good. So the expert analysis of the man who has owned the team for a quarter century is, if we could just complete a pass, it would look good. That is football visionary stuff, folks. There are lots of different elements to this. And you might be sitting there saying, everything Woody Johnson said is right. Justin Fields has been terrible. What's the problem with what he said? I'm glad you asked. There are quite a few problems with what Woody Johnson said. Number one, and I think this kind of gets lost, these are just really, really classless comments. When you're the owner, when you're in any position of authority and things aren't going well, you don't point fingers publicly at other people, even people who aren't doing their job well. I don't care what your business is. And this is something that happens over and over with Woody Johnson. He did it to Zach Wilson. There were reports that after Mike White played a terrible game in Seattle in 2022 that officially eliminated the Jets from the playoffs, he went in and cursed at Mike White in the locker room. Winning organizations don't do this. And I don't care if you're talking about sports. I don't care what field you're in. There's no business that's successful where the owner acts like this. In your job, if you weren't doing it well, or if somebody wasn't doing it well, the owner's job is to fix it. And sometimes the owner's job is to fire somebody, but the owner doesn't go out in public and bash people. And as difficult as the Jets team is to watch because they lose, there's also just a classlessness from the top of the organization, for me at least. I mean, maybe you feel differently, but it makes this team difficult to root for, the way Woody Johnson behaves. And, one of the buzzwords we hear in this fan base is accountability, the lack of accountability in this franchise. Well, it starts at the top, because when the owner's out there publicly pointing fingers at one player, and again, this is not the first time he's done this. He did it with Zach Wilson. He's done this over and over and over. How can there be any accountability? The owner's not saying, I failed at doing my job. And this brings me to perhaps a bigger point. What's wrong with Woody Johnson saying this? What's wrong with Woody Johnson calling out Justin Fields? Well, let's compare the damage Justin Fields has done to this organization with the damage Woody Johnson's done. Because the Jets are in this situation they're in at 0-7, 15 straight years, no playoffs. Woody Johnson's got a lot more blame for the state of this organization than Justin Fields. Justin Fields may not be playing well. Justin Fields is playing terribly. But Woody Johnson is clearly more to blame for the situation the Jets are in, the moves he's dictated, the poor decisions he's made, the lack of any sort of vision this franchise has shown. This is much more on ownership than it is the quarterback. So, yeah, you may sit there and on the merits, the quarterback, of course, is a big problem with the New York Jets, but the owner is frankly a bigger problem. Failed quarterbacks come and go. We've seen a million quarterbacks have come here and failed and left. The one constant in this organization over the last 15 years of colossal failure, 15 years of unfathomable failure, the one consistent within the New York Jets during that time has been the ownership of the Johnson family. And I'm not very happy to sit here and listen to the owner instead of saying, you know what, I've got to be better, pointing the finger at one player. Yeah, look, nobody's going to defend the job Justin Fields is doing. But there's also something else that should be pointed out that I think got lost yesterday. We are less than 7 months removed from a comment Woody Johnson made after the Jets signed Justin Fields. He said, I think Justin Fields is going to be a total winner for us. I've been impressed with him since his college days. It was he or Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's going to be really good. So in March, after the Jets brought in Justin Fields, and by the way, it's not like the Jets were just to sign Justin Fields. The team actively went out and signed him. The team actively, he was their number one priority. The team that Woody Johnson owns made Justin Fields their number one priority in free agency. And Woody Johnson sat there and said, in that 2021 draft, it was, it was neck and neck on my draft board between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Now, the context of that should not be missed because, as many people pointed out at the time, the Jets drafted Zach Wilson that year. And people at the time correctly asked, well, if you thought Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence were the top two quarterbacks, why did your team draft Wilson over Fields? And all you have to do is think about it for a few seconds, and the answer is pretty obvious. What Woody is trying to claim is, oh, I always knew Justin Fields was going to be great, but that darn Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, they made me take Zach Wilson. Woody's trying to make himself look smart. He's trying to make it seem like he was smarter than his football people, and his football people led him astray. I think had Justin Fields continued to play, we were maybe a week or two away from Woody Johnson claiming, I've never heard of Justin Fields before, because there can never be any accountability from the owner. In this franchise, in Woody Johnson's mind, the owner cannot fail. The owner can only be failed by his people. What you heard yesterday was zero self-reflection, zero accountability. And you see the reason the Jets are at the bottom of the league. There are lots of reasons, but more than anything, it's ownership like this. You don't hear this stuff coming from winning franchises. Name me the last time, Kansas City's owner bashed a player in public. Name me the last time Baltimore's owner bashed a player in public. Name me the last time Philadelphia's player bashed an owner in public like this, bashed a player in public like this. It doesn't happen on winning franchises. And winning franchises, the owner sets a tone. Accountability starts at the top. And they don't always get everything right. Look, all the franchises I've named, all the great franchises in this league, Buffalo, you go down, you can go down the list. They've made errors as big as the Jets have made. But there's accountability at the top. And they put good people in place, and they put them in positions to succeed. Something that's beyond Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson always thinks that there's one quick fix. And Woody Johnson thinks that there's one problem with the team, and if we just fix that problem, we're in great shape. Woody Johnson does not know how to run a football team. And I did not need these comments yesterday to understand that, but it's just another reminder. Woody Johnson is the NFL's George Costanza. When it comes to trying to escape blame, he is the guy running out of the smoke-filled room, throwing the senior citizens and the kids aside, opening the door, getting himself out, and slamming the door behind him. Unfortunately for the New York Jets, Woody Johnson's assessment of the team strongly aligns with a classic Costanza quote. If you believe it, it's not a lie. Woody Johnson thinks that he's a good owner. Unfortunately, also for Jets fans, there's no sign that Woody Johnson is going to ever start doing the opposite of his initial instincts. And that leaves us all to say serenity now. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn over to our weekly mailbag because beneath the absurdity of Woody Johnson's comments yesterday, there was an indication that Aaron Glenn has some pretty decent job security, more than a lot of people may have thought. And that could have big implications for the Jets as they build their team through the trade deadline and beyond. We'll talk about what that could mean as we continue here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Jets.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, or even follow the live line during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. Let's look ahead to our Week 8 line. The Jets heading to Cincinnati to play the Bengals, and the line has moved. We started the week with the Bengals 4.5-point favorites. I expected it to get bigger, and it has. Bengals now currently 6.5-point favorites on FanDuel. It's the best place to get in on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app to get started. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. And a big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Let's jump into our weekly mailbag now. Thanks so much to everybody who sent in questions. Our first question: John, do you think Woody ultimately has to make a decision about Glenn and Muji, or at least give them a meaningful status update before the November 4th trade deadline? If it's been communicated that they are 100% returning in 2026, won't they be more likely to act as a steward to the franchise? Examples would be trading veterans that can't help them win now for future draft capital, taking a look at Brady Cook, and even resting players in a meaningless game in December if a key draft pick is on the line. Well, I think that if you read between the lines from what Woody Johnson said yesterday, he kind of gave an indication about where he's at on this Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji regime, because while what he said about Justin Fields drew the headlines, and rightly so, it was in response to a question about Aaron Glenn's job performance. And what Woody essentially said was, I think Aaron Glenn's doing a fine job. It's just the quarterback who's not good enough. So I think that if you were looking for an update, I mean, that suggests that at this point, at least, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji's job seems to be okay. It seems like very likely they'll return for year 2. And there have also been reports from behind the scenes, writers who have big sources in the building, that Woody is not close to making a change at this point in time. Of course, Woody is famously erratic. He is famously swayed by fan sentiment. So, depending on what happens between now and the end of the season, it's entirely possible that could change. But I think heading into the trade deadline, there's very little reason to think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji believe that their job is on the line. And to answer the question, yes, it's always better when the coaching staff and front office think that they have job security, because they are more likely to put the team's long-term financial interests first. And one of the things I've always said in the NFL is the most dangerous thing is when what's best for the team long-term does not align with what's best for the coach and GM long-term, because that's when you get into real trouble. And, a lot of attention has rightly been paid to the role Woody Johnson played in the last 2 years, in 2023 and 2024, some of the bad decisions, some of the short-sighted decisions the Jets have made. But there were also a lot of decisions Joe Douglas made that I don't think were really pushed by Woody. I think Joe Douglas was just trying to save his job. And one thing I will say is that there have been a lot of bad Jets coaches and GMs who have, even though they knew they were getting fired, put the team first. I remember Todd Bowles in 2018. There was a late season game in Tennessee. Sam Darnold was coming off an injury. He was healthy enough to play, but he was not healthy enough to get a full week of practice in. He was kind of healing during the week, so he wasn't able to practice fully that week heading into the game. And even though he was ready to play Sunday, Bowles started Josh McCown in that game, and the Jets lost. It was a really bad loss. And Bowles got annihilated in the media for that decision. Why wouldn't you play Sam Darnold if he was healthy? But I always thought it was a very noble thing to do by Bowles, because it was a rookie quarterback. He was coming off an injury. He did not have a full week of practice reps. And even though Bowles knew he was getting fired, Bowles put the interest of the team and Sam Darnold first. I don't think I've ever seen a more cynical display of a guy trying to save his job than what Joe Douglas did the last 2 years. Again, a lot of it's on Woody. I think Woody dictated a lot of what happened, but there were moves they didn't need to make. There were decisions they didn't need to make. There were cap management they didn't need to make that really would not have, even if what the Jets did panned out, some of the moves Joe Douglas made, he borrowed from the future to try and like marginally improve the short to run to save his job. It's just stuff that didn't need to happen. So yes, it's clearly much better for the Jets if Glenn and Muji think that they have long-term job security. They can think a little bit longer term. They can think about what the right moves are going forward, trading veterans who maybe don't have a future with the team. I think any free agent who's not going to be re-signed should obviously be traded at the deadline, because the Jets are not going to be a team that's going to get compensatory picks this year for losing free agents. Almost certainly. I mean, they're going to have to go out and sign players in free agency, which means you don't get compensatory picks, even if you lose guys. So yeah. And I think like at this point, all indications are Glenn and Muji think that they have job security. Whether that's the case at the end of the season, we'll see. I think, but it always takes something really, really extreme for a team to make a coaching change after one season. I think that the first 7 weeks have kind of like been the start that you need, but it has to continue through the second half of the year. And at some point, you think the Jets are probably going to win a game. Something will probably go right. So I would imagine at this point that Glenn and Muji are overwhelmingly likely to return for 2026. Now, after that, we'll see what happens. I think a lot of it depends on the results next year. Next question. In the event Woody Johnson fired Aaron Glenn, would this job be desirable for a new coach with the first pick if Fields gets cut? I think Fields is probably getting cut this offseason. It's just been a disaster. I don't know. Maybe it's possible the Jets if the Jets would have to eat salary. Maybe if the Jets ate a lot of salary, they could get something in return for him in a trade. But it's almost certain that Fields is not going to be back in 2026. I mean, I think it's very difficult when the owner's coming out and publicly saying you stink to bring a player in a position as prominent as quarterback back to the team the next year. So, would this be an attractive job? I mean, from the standpoint that you get the number one pick, if you like one of the quarterbacks, you could draft them, and you'll have more cap space this year, because this was kind of the year the Jets were using to unclog their cap. They're going to have to there's actually more cap that needs to be unclogged next year. I mean, the Jets are going to have a lot of dead money next year, because that's when the bulk of Aaron Rodgers and C.J. Mosley's money hits their dead money. It hits their dead money allocation. But the cap's going to be better this offseason. That said, it's a tough job. I mean, we've seen this job's been a career killer for coaches. Or maybe, and the coaches who do recover Todd Bowles, the coaches whose careers are salvaged, it was still not a pleasant experience for them. And, coaches have all different motivations, but one of the common threads you hear is they want stable ownership. They want ownership that they can work for. And you see this over and over. It wasn't just yesterday. You see over and over that Woody Johnson's just an impossible guy to work for. And in the event Aaron Glenn gets fired, the job's a tough sell, because you're now dealing with a coach who got 1 year before he was fired, followed by a coach who was fired after 5 games. So, at some point you have a lot of coaches are going to look at this and ask, am I actually going to be given a chance to build this team up, or am I going to be fired at the first sign of trouble? So I think this job would be a really tough sell. Of course, somebody will take it. It's one of 32 teams in the NFL, but guys with options almost certainly would not take it. I think that you're essentially either what you have to do is either find a guy who's a proven quality coach who maybe coming off a bad break from his former team, like kind of like a football version of Tom Thibodeau when the Knicks hired him. Thibodeau was a proven quality coach, but he had a really bad tenure in Minnesota, so he didn't have a lot of options. Either you have to get a guy like that, or you just have to hope that you hit on the next great coach before he becomes a hot commodity. And asking Woody Johnson to find that guy is a very, very tough ask. I mean, if you look at the last cycle, Aaron Glenn was one of the hot candidates. And really the only reason he was interested in the Jets job was that he was a great player with the team. He loves the Jets. He loves the franchise. I think a lot of the hot candidates wouldn't even give the Jets a look last year. It was true. I mean, Ben Johnson wasn't interested. You go down the list. Aaron Glenn was one of the few hot candidates who was genuinely interested in the job. And that is that's because he played here. There aren't really any other coaches out there who would be hot candidates who played here. So, from the standpoint that you'd have the number one pick, I guess the job would be attractive. But from almost every other standpoint, I mean, this franchise has shown itself to be dysfunctional, and the dysfunction starts at the top with the owner. So I think the job would be a tough sell. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to quarterbacks. We know Justin Fields is not coming back next year. We know Tyrod Taylor is not the solution at quarterback long term. That's not exactly a bold statement. If the Jets draft a quarterback this year, how can they avoid the traps that they've fallen into in the past? I have some thoughts on that. I'll give them to you as we continue here on this Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I just used Game Time a couple weeks ago. I went to see the Jets play the Denver Broncos in London. It was easy, a couple taps. Got a great deal on a pretty good seat. I had a really good view of the field. Game Time can get you the seats you want. And, with this Jets team in such bad shape, there can be some real deals available if you want to go see a game late in the season. Use Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This is the Locked On Jets podcast. We're doing our Wednesday mailbag show. Our next question, John, it continues to bother me that other teams are so much more successful at drafting quarterbacks than the Jets. In the last two drafts, the Bears, Commanders, Texans, Patriots, and Giants all drafted quarterbacks who are on track to be franchise passers. While I realize drafting quarterbacks is not a science, it should not be this hard. The last quarterback the Jets drafted who had success was Chad Pennington, which was 2 decades ago. What are the Jets doing wrong here? Well, I think they're doing a lot wrong. I actually wrote an article about this the other day on gangrenenation.com, and I made the case, which is going to be a controversial take, that the Jets are not really in a position to draft a quarterback in the first round in 2026. And we're going to talk about this plenty in the weeks and months ahead. And I know that that's probably, you probably heard that and are like, what are you talking about? Have you not seen Justin Fields play? Yes, I've seen Justin Fields play. And yes, I know that the Jets have a glaring need at quarterback. And I know quarterback's the most important position on the field. But I think there are reasons that the Jets fail when they try and develop quarterbacks. And we've now seen multiple quarterbacks who were early picks with the Jets who failed here go on to have success elsewhere. Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. And at some point, you have to ask what's wrong with this franchise. And some people will say, oh, it's just Jets bad luck. But I don't think it's bad luck. In the article I wrote the other day, I made the point that there are two types of franchises that draft quarterbacks. There are the franchises who have a plan to develop the quarterback, and the franchises who look at the quarterback and hope that the quarterback will save everything. Will save them. Will save everything. Will save jobs. Will lift the franchise up. Will bail everybody out from their mistakes. The franchises that try and develop quarterbacks, they have a plan in place. They make sure they have a good offensive line, good receivers, good coaching. They understand the quarterback skills. They understand the system they need to put the quarterback in. They understand what the quarterback needs to improve on and come up with an action plan to help that quarterback improve. The other franchises, which the Jets are like the chief franchise from this group, they essentially hope the quarterback is the franchise savior. They hope the quarterback steps in and is dominant on day one. And that sometimes happens. Occasionally you get a guy who's just like who's a finished product, but you can't count on that. And the other thing is, teams aren't even really good at scouting which are the guys who can lift a franchise and which are the guys who need development. There are a couple of different types of quarterbacks. They're the guys who step in and are just ready to go day one. Then they're the guys who have skills, but they need to be developed. Well, Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be the guy who was ready day one. He's looking like more of a guy who needs to be in the right situation. I don't know that a lot of people thought Drake May was a guy who could lift the franchise up immediately. I think a lot of people thought he was a guy with tools who needed to be in the right situation. It looks like he's lifting New England up. So we can't even really scout these guys well. We can't even really scout the distinction between the guys who can lift a franchise up immediately, who are in the vast minority, and the guys who can succeed in the right situation. The Jets do everything wrong. And I think one of the problems with the Jets franchise is they do everything the opposite of the way the great franchises in this league operate. And then they act like all of their problems are bad luck. They act like they're just cursed, when in reality, they They do all the worst practices in the league. There are reasons the Jets quarterbacks fail here and do well elsewhere. And a lot of it's the position they put them in. I mean, remember when Sam Darnold was here? Do you remember the offensive line they had him working with? Do you remember the wide receiver group they had him working with? They even like, you even heard it from like the ownership at the time. Well, we have Sam, we're going to be okay. Like Sam Darnold had an enormous load on his shoulders at 21 years old, as he was still just trying to figure out how to play the position. Now he's got more experience. He's learned how to read defenses. And he's on teams that aren't asking him to do as much. That was especially true last year in Minnesota. You know, the Jets are their own worst enemy in these things. You can make the wrong choice, of course. But there are things you can do to increase your odds, and there are things you can do to decrease your odds. And the Jets always do the stuff that decreases their odds, and that's one of the big reasons they're in the position that they're in. You know, there's just that's just the way it is. Next question is from Dan. At what point should we start Brady Cook? Say we're 0-13 and Taylor looks horrible. Would you start him then? You know, we're reaching a point in that scenario where I don't know how much it really matters, but the question I ask is like, what are you gaining by starting Brady Cook? You know, I know you can say you don't really know how good a guy is before you see him on the field in a regular season game, but there are limits to that. I mean, this is not a guy who any NFL team has seen fit to put on a roster right now. The Jets haven't even seen fit to put him on their 53-man roster at this point. You know, is Brady Cook part of this team's future? Is there any chance Brady Cook's part of this team's future? He would not even be here had Jordan Travis not retired. You know, Jordan Travis was supposed to be the number 3 quarterback this year. If Jordan Travis had not retired, Brady Cook would have been cut in training camp. Did Brady Cook really show anything in the exhibition season? I mean, he led the Jets to 3 points in a half of football against a bunch of practice squad players in the final exhibition game. You know, does he have good, positive skills? I don't see an NFL skill set with him. Is he even likely to be here next year? I don't think so. I think there's a good chance he's gone next year. So, you know, I don't know how you would throw a UDFA rookie who's on a practice squad into this situation, this level of chaos, and expect anything other than disaster. Now, would it be worse than Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor? Depends on your definition of worse. I mean, you know, Justin Fields' worst game is pretty tough to not beat. When Tyrod Taylor's off, yeah, you know, like maybe you could beat their worst game, but they're pretty much like no odds of success for Cook. I mean, I guess if like you get to like, I don't know, week 18, maybe week 17, you just want to give the young guys some reps, maybe you do it then. But you know, you also have to remember, like, the team does have to try. Like, I think the team does owe it to like the players on the roster to at least put together a professional effort going forward. What I would say is that if Brady Cook is on the field at any point this year, it means one of two things. One, it means I would say 3 things actually. One, it means that both Taylor and Fields are injured, because I think the Jets would go back to Fields before they'd go to Cook. 2, it means Glenn and Muji have been completely assured beyond any reasonable doubt that they're back next year, because if you thought your job was even remotely on the line, there's no way you'd put Brady Cook on the field. Or 3, and this could go with 2, you're just outright tanking, because as bad as the quarterback play the Jets have gotten, I don't think Brady Cook gives you any chance of success. And I'm not trying to like be hard on Brady Cook, but it's just the reality. If you put a practice squad player who's a rookie on the field in this infrastructure, it is going to be horrific. And I mean, like, I don't think we need to see Brady Cook to know that that's the case. I mean, I guess at some point it doesn't matter, but I don't see what you're gaining by putting Brady Cook on the field. And our last question comes from Taylor, who writes, "Hey, John, I feared the team would be bad this year. I saw another 4 or 5 win season is likely, but I have to admit, I had no clue we would be by far the worst team in the NFL. Do you think our roster really is the worst, or is the coaching so bad it drags everything down around it?" I think the coaching has to take a look at the mirror, because while this roster was not good, I mean, what I did before the season and what I do now is I compare it to the 2020 team under Adam Gase that went 2-14. That team had zero talent. And we know the coaching was terrible in 2020 with Adam Gase, but like, who were the good players on the 2020 team? Who were the players who like had success in the NFL? The best player on the 2020 team was probably Marcus May. I liked Marcus May a lot, but I draw the line at Marcus May being my team's best player. He's like a quality starting safety. You know, Quinton Williams was on the team. He had not really broken out yet. Okay, Frank Gore had a lot of success in the NFL, but he was 37, and the Jets built the offense around him. I mean, there was just zero talent on that team. Whereas this team, you know, there was no Sauce Gardner in 2020. There was no Garrett Wilson in 2020. The only blue chip player the Jets had in 2020 heading into training camp was Jamal Adams. He was traded before the season. You know, like even like the second tier guys, you know, there was no guy who had success like Jamie and Sherwood or Will McDonald. You know, there's no Joe Tipman. there are enough pieces here that this team should not be 0-7. And that's, look, a lot of it's on the coaching. I've been on Steve Wilkes all season long. I do think the defense is improving. Like, I'll give Wilkes some credit for that. Wilkes, I'm not ready to, I put him on the hot seat a few weeks ago. I'm not ready to take him off the hot seat just yet, but we're trending in the right direction on defense. But still, the first 5 weeks were ugly on defense. And I think Tanner Engstrand's getting a free pass because of the quarterback play. I mean, every week there's something with Engstrand that just makes no sense. I mean, against Denver, there's no target to Breece Hall when the quarterback's struggling. Against Carolina, there's 2 run plays in the second half. And these are just like things that, like, anybody, any fan in the stands could say this makes no sense. This is the stuff Engstrand's doing. I think Engstrand's a good play designer. I think you look at a lot of his play concepts, they're well designed, but I don't think this guy has any idea how to call a game. I mean, you look at the offense they built with Justin Fields. And one thing I've started to see the Jets float in the media is, well, Fields isn't a good fit for Tanner Engstrand's system. And I'm sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. It's not like Fields just like appeared out of thin air. The Jets targeted him as their number one guy in free agency this year. And I'm assuming the offensive coordinator had some say in that. So, like, the Jets are now trying to, like, this is like classic Jets. The Jets are now trying to say, this mistake we made, it wasn't really our mistake. We just got into an unfortunate situation. Coaches have to take some heat for this performance because, well, this team is not good. This team is not 0-7 bad. This team and a better coached team right now could have 3 to 4 wins, and that's on the coaches. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on the podcast, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow, crossover Thursday with Locked On Bengals. Get you ready for week 8.